Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Marc Azoulay. He's the founder of Men's Therapy Online, a community and healing hub for men who want to get back on their feet or take their lives to the next level. Welcome to the show, Marc.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
You are welcome to the show, Marc. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people, a lot of men, a lot of women also will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about authentic masculinity. So, but before we do that, Marc, for the audience, I want to understand a bit about you, a bit about your journey to reaching this particular phase, being the founder of Men's Therapy Online. Is it a business for you or is it a mission for you?
It's a mission. It's a mission for me. So it's a service that I needed when I was growing up. Very, very long story short, I'm in recovery from drug addiction. And when I went through the recovery process and got sober, I found it really difficult to connect with other men in a real way. And I was missing real masculine community. I was missing, other guys that understood it, that got it, that had emotional depth, that wanted to get better. I didn't have any role models. I didn't really have any people that I could look around and be like, oh, I really want to be like that guy. So now, 10 years later, I'm trying to create that for people going through the same thing, that are looking to just have real conversations with guys about what really matters.
Right, Marc. So you tell us a bit about Men's Therapy Online. Is it only about addiction, de-addiction, or is it about much more than that? What do you do at this particular place?
Yeah, it's about any kind of men's mental health, really. When I find when men come to therapy, it's usually after a crisis, whether that be an addiction, right, a relapse, a divorce, losing their job, maybe losing a partner, having somebody die, having an illness, right? Usually the guys, something happens to them. Men are very reactive in that way, that we don't often seek help until it's a little bit too late. But once they get in, we offer a couple things. So we offer individual counseling, which is kind of your typical psychotherapy. We offer men's groups, which is small groups of 6 people that can just talk about what's really going on and help each other grow. And then we do retreats where we do wilderness backpacking retreats out here in Colorado. And we do a typical traditional men's retreat in Boulder, Colorado. So we have all these different ways for people to plug in, as well as an online Slack community where you can just talk to me or talk to your other therapists or talk to your guys all the time. And we do free community events. We do hikes around Colorado. So we're a little bit more than your typical therapist in that we're really focusing on the community aspect and helping men to connect, because there just isn't that many places to do that outside of like the bar, in traditional Western culture. We don't really have many places where we can just sit down and have real conversations.
Absolutely, Marc. So in terms of men's health or mental health, what are the challenges that they are facing? Means, is it that they are looking at life a bit differently in their own manner and taking the path which is not good for them? Or is it that there is a lot of pressure from around them? How does it work for them, for men, so that it leading to mental health issues for men specifically?
Yeah, I think a lot of both of what you're saying. I think a lot of men, especially young men, are very lost these days. They don't quite know what it means to be a man. And at least certainly here in the West, there's a lot of contradictory messages about masculinity. You're supposed to be tough and suck it up, but you're also supposed to be gentle and caring. You're supposed to be like a strong leader, but you're also not supposed to take up a lot of space. So, on both sides of our political spectrum here, there's a lot of very radicalized messages about what it means to be a man. And what I see with a lot of the youth, and I'm actually curious what it's like in India, but a lot of the youth, they're playing a ton of video games, they're smoking a ton of marijuana, they're drinking, they're not really excelling. Like, men are dropping out of college at a rate much higher than we've ever seen. There's just so many of these things where guys are struggling to find their place in the world. And that's part of what we are trying to help our guys to do, is find those male mentors and those role models so that they don't flounder in the way, and develop, what this topic is about, authentic masculinity, right? A new masculinity that isn't just about like putting everything in the box, right? It's about being a leader. It's about being open. It's about, fighting your inner demons. It's about really conquering your inner space so that you can be better for the people that matter in your life, your family, your job, your friends, your community.
Right, Mark. You said that men are struggling to find their place
Yeah.
in the world. Why is it a struggle? Means who's taking their place or putting problems for them? And who is setting are people expecting things that they did not expect from men earlier on? And why there is so much of question or talk about masculinity? Is it in is masculine men are under problem, or masculinity is facing problems? Help us understand that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I think a lot of the struggles is that men's traditional role, which is being a provider, right? Bringing in money for the family, being a protector, make sure that everybody's safe. Those things were pushed on the side in the West, specifically around the feminist movement and the hippie movement, right? So women didn't need men in the same way, which is good, right? Like women should be able to have jobs, like that's all really well and good, but it left men really struggling. So we went and got in touch with our feminine side, right? Which is helpful, but it left a lot of men feeling very empty, because I think at our core, we are warriors, we are fighters, we're hunters. We want to go out there and we want to bag the big game, and take home the treasure, right? We want to be heroes. And I think like that traditional role really got upset for men. And then we were put into a more feminized role of being supporting, caregiving, nurturing, but doing it in a feminine way. So what MTO, what Men's Therapy Online is trying to do is expand that definition, but do it in a masculine way, right? So it's not so much being like a caregiver, it's more like being a coach, right? Being a leader, being a mentor, having that kind of like masculine oomph behind it and that strength behind it. When you think of these old ancient cultures that had these councils of men, right? A circle of men all sitting in a circle. You look at, the Knights of the Round Table, right? Something like that, right? Like an honored pantheon of men, or in Hindu culture, right? Like your pantheon of gods and goddesses, right? There's like this honor of all the men that sit there that are able to offer debate and advice and guidance to the youth. And
Even the Greeks used to do, even the Greeks used to do. If you talk about you could talk about something called the symposium, Plato's symposium and all. Carry on.
The Romans had the forum, right? I mean, in all these different cultures, we had this strong culture of masculinity. And I think like we don't have that anymore, right? And we're hoping to build that at Men's Therapy Online. And as far as men being lost, it's like I think we're expected to be everything, right? We're expected to make a lot of money, to be really caring and compassionate, to have great sex, to be athletically fit, to be perfect everywhere, especially with the onset of social media and the internet, where there's always comparison. A lot of guys feel really inadequate. And because there isn't that structure like the symposium, like we're talking about, I think a lot of guys flounder and they hide from life instead of getting in the field and competing. They kind of sit in the stands and they critique and they're bitter and they're upset. They spend a lot of time online, posting on Twitter or whatever, being angry. And we're trying to get those guys to come off the stands and come into the field, and be like, it's okay. You can compete. We can teach you things. It's okay not to be perfect right out the gate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In earlier times, people used to choose their partners after a lot of trying to understand things.
Yeah.
And even women used to look at their partners the way their role was. There's nothing wrong in looking. They used to also choose good partners. Men also used to choose women as per their. Even in today's time, do you think men are more in problems because they are not utilizing their brains to see that the partners that they are choosing, they should not be more on impulse, but rather in terms of compatibility? Nothing wrong with the women being looking at things from their own perspective, but not everyone will be the best match for you.
Yeah.
Either it's dating, and especially if you are going for a long-term relationship. How do you see this? Can you blame the feminist movement for this, or the hippies for this? Or is it about man's it can't be always the brawn, it has to be brain also that has to be used. So how do you look at this part?
Yeah, I wouldn't blame the feminist movement for that. I think by and large the feminist movement was actually pretty good, but I blame more like media, right? So the idea of love, right? Modern love has only been around for less than 100 years, right? Like in most traditional cultures, and what I assume about India, or I'm Jewish, so in Jewish culture, right, marriage was very much about compatibility and very much a decision made by the families in many ways. You know, like love was yeah, it's important, but it's more like, are you going to make a good partner in a marriage? Are you going to be a good mother? Are you going to be a good father? And can you really pair off really well? And it was about, you know, survival and about continuing the family line. Now with modern culture, I'd say maybe like Hollywood, right? Like romance and love and being attractive and being sexy and all that stuff, like that takes the forefront. And in my own personal journey of dating, like I'm engaged right now, I had to go from dating like the most attractive, you know, adventurous, crazy person that I could find. Those are good people to date. They're fun. But now who I'm dating is wonderful, and she's compassionate and she's nurturing and she's mom material, you know. And I think like we don't talk about that enough. So I'm happy you're bringing that up, of like figuring out like who's going to be the mother of your children, right? Who's going to be your wife, your life partner. And it might not be the most attractive, stunning person, right? It might be the more like consistent, nurturing, calming, rational, like thinking person that can be with you during difficult times. I think a lot of modern relationships are very turbulent. You know, there's like a lot of fighting and a lot of drama, which is not what you want in your house. You know, you want your house to be a place of calm and peace.
Absolutely, absolutely. And being stunning is something, which you have to look into the other person nicely, because everyone can become as stunning in their own way. It's just that you have to discover it. It's
Yeah.
like, I used to think, why do all these food articles, they look so good in pictures? Then one day I saw that shoot happening, and I saw them putting so many things into that, and then all the shoot was happening. And
Mhm.
so the picture will look very good, but you can't eat that picture. That food that is you being used. In the same way, life is like that. You might see so many, very glitzy things and so many things, but you cannot always take them home. Means it has to be compatible to you. Nothing wrong with either side. That is where the word compatibility comes into the picture.
Yeah, and when it comes to being authentic, right, which is essentially like just telling the truth, really, right, and telling the truth about who you are and being able to look deeply, maybe using therapy or books or self-improvement as a way to understand who you are and communicating that to your partner, that's how you find compatibility, right? Because like if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what your puzzle piece looks like, how are you going to know who it's going to fit with? You know, and I think that's another kind of issue a lot of young men go through, is that they're not taking the time to figure out who they actually are. They're just trying to like act like someone they see online or a movie star or some idea of what it means to be a man, instead of listening, right? Taking a chance to listen to themselves and figuring out like what they actually like and what their temperament is, and then finding somebody who is a good match for that, you know.
Absolutely. And you see, there's nothing wrong with uh, women desiring more from the men, much
Yeah.
more equality in their own manner. Equality does not mean in a negative sense. For example, is it now, that when they want men also to play a bit of a role, because a lot of women are also working, so a bit of a role in, other spheres of life beyond just going for hunting or doing
Yeah.
that being just the provider. uh, do you think it's time for men to be still masculine, but playing that role a bit more smartly? That the lady of the house is happy also. She
Mhm.
knows you have been there, as well as you are also being authentically masculine.
Yeah, I mean, what another big part of what we do at Men's Therapy Online is we have groups for dads and fathers, right? And the idea is to make that more homemaker parent role something that's really cool. You know, that is, and I think it is really cool. And I think kids need dads and they need moms, right? They need both. And it's very different. You know, there's a study that I love quoting by John Gottman, where they looked at parents playing with their kids on the playground, right? And they just had a camera. The parents didn't know that they were watching, and they saw that the women, right, the kid's up on the playground, and the mom is underneath, right, making sure the kid doesn't fall, right? But the dad is up on the playground, encouraging the kid to climb higher. And I think that perfectly encapsulates why you need both a mom and a dad, right? Like the mom is there when you fall to help you get back up, and the dad is to help you climb higher. And I think that's a really, really meaningful thing in a lot of men's lives, that they're able to, yeah, take a break off the work a little bit and lean into being a father and being a mentor and passing down the knowledge that they've gained from their life onto the next generation. I mean, I can't think of anything more meaningful than that, right? It's just it's so immediate.
Right. So, what are the questions that men generally ask about? How does one become an authentically masculine? Means, is there a written sort of a list that these are the things that you need to check on and click right, and then you are that, or is it something much more than that?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a pathway, so we do have a list, right? We have like kind of like 5 steps that a guy can take. I mean, I can run through them really quickly, right? So the first one is finding a male mentor, right? So it's hard to know what it means to be a man unless you have seen another man and you've done that, right? And you have someone that you trust and you actually respect. Very hard for a lot of guys. A lot of guys don't have a lot of respect for the older generations, but it's our work to find a mentor. The second one is developing an honor code. So developing a sense of like who you are, what your values are, what's important to you. You know, maybe it's honesty, maybe it's courage, maybe it's strength, maybe it's mastery, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but having a sense of what your honor code is so that when it's tested in the world, you can have a sense of integrity. That's critical. The next one is leaning into community. So figuring out a way to give back and feeling like you belong. So many men, I think, especially in the West, are very isolated. So finding community, whether that's your church community or your gym community or your school where your kids go, but like actually showing up and helping people and being generous, being kind of like that staple in masculinity. The number 4 is being aware of privilege. And that's kind of like a touchy topic now, but privilege is both kind of benefits that we have from being men, but also burdens, right? Also these expectations that are placed on us. So it's both positive and negative, but being aware of kind of the society of which we've been born into and what the expectations are with that. And then the final one is understanding trauma. So every man, every person has trauma from their childhood. Stuff has happened to them. We all have our own personal story. Everybody suffered loss. And by understanding our trauma and healing it, we can show up as a better role model to other people, right? Because we know what our triggers are and what our hot buttons are. And it's our responsibility to heal that. So that's kind of the pathway towards becoming an authentic man. I can go into any of those in more detail, but that's where someone can start to have like a path to like, growing up, right? Going from being a boy to being a man. I think you got to kind of clear these different obstacles to get there.
Right. And earlier you talked about different cultures, even the
Yep.
Jewish culture, the Asian culture, the Hindu culture. Uh, this issue of authentic masculinity, of trying to find that, it's cropping up in a lot of places
Yeah.
across the world, including in in especially in India, also big cities, when you are trying to understand more about themselves, about yourself. How can people uh, also look at the culture, but as well as try to address the problems of mental health, not looking at from a traditional mental health issue, but issue from a masculinity per sort of a thing? How can they get started with this, especially in parts of the world where the culture plays a role, a big amount of role, and men are not that able to, that much able to open up?
Right. Exactly. I mean, it's tough, right? I mean, I guess it's kind of what you're saying, like, and it seems kind of basic, but it's like just start talking to other guys about what's really going on. I think a lot of men feel more comfortable talking to other men than talking to women, and we can be more honest, we can be more brutal, we can be more raw in a lot of ways. So taking that small risk with your friends or maybe with your father or maybe with a cousin or a brother and tell them how you actually feel and start to get in that. I think for a lot of traditional cultures, religion and spiritual practice is a good entry point, whether it be practicing meditation or practicing prayer or journaling or reading some of the old texts can be helpful, because there's a lot of this authentic masculinity. It's not new, right? I mean, like if you go to Indian culture and then the Bhagavad Gita, right, there's like so much of that in there of being a leader. And Shiva is like both really a ferocious warrior and a really tender lover and leader, right, and household leader, and he's a dancer, right? I mean, like there's so much in there that is not just this traditional like rah rah go out and kill everybody thing, right? Like he's a very interesting and very diverse character, right? So there's so much in those ancient texts that I think can also point the way to what it means to kind of break out of the box of being a man and have these different possibilities there, and what it means to be kind of a more awakened or enlightened individual. Um, and I think it's like this idea of not letting stuff get bad. You know, I think a lot of guys, we stuff it down. We're trained to stuff all of our feelings down, and then it comes out as a drinking problem, right? Or it comes out as maybe we yell at our wife, or God forbid we hit our kid or something, right? Or we, I don't know, we're distracted, we get into a car accident, right? Like listen to those signs. You know, like if things are happening that are really bad in your life, there's probably something deeper going on there. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but it means that you're probably hurting. And finding, you know, a therapist or talking to somebody, or I don't know, even just journaling can be a place to get a little bit curious of like, oh, why do I get angry all the time? You know, why am I having a lot of resentment and judgment towards the world? You know, why am I single at 45 years old? You know, like getting curious about those questions in a non-judgmental way can start to open the door, I think, to a more authentic way.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to know, about psychoanalysis, neuroscience, Buddhism, and you
Yep.
just talked about the Bhagavad Gita and Lord Shiva. Tell us a bit, how did all these things, you brought them together? How did you come to know one part in psychoanalysis and neuroscience, and then about the Bhagavad Gita as well as Buddhism? So when
Yeah.
did you come, how did you get into understanding these things?
All that stuff, yeah. So my undergraduate degree was at Carnegie Mellon University, which is like a tech university in America, and I studied neuroscience. I've always been interested in like just the way people work, right, and the way we perceive things. And I've always been a seeker because, you know, like I said, growing up, I was hurting, right? Like I was kind of bullied. I was a nerd. I didn't really fit in. So I really to understand like what people were and what was going on. So neuroscience was my entry point into that. And then when I got sober, mindfulness, right, and meditation for me through Buddhism primarily was my main input of helping me just get present, because I was like, hey, I don't know what's real, you know, but I know if I sit down and shut up and stare at a wall and just like breathe, I can maybe get to some sense of truth and reality, because I've always been seeking what's real and what is true. Um, I went to Buddhist university, so I did a 3-year degree in Buddhism. And in doing that, I was exposed to some Hindu teachings. I was exposed to a lot of other traditional religions, exposed to a lot of spirituality and mysticism. And that really, there's so much in there, right? There's so much in our mythology and in our fairy tales. And, you know, what I've loved about Hindu culture is that, again, my understanding is that your gods and goddesses are internal states, right? They're emotions, their mindsets, their ways of being, right? You're looking inwards to find your gods and goddesses. And this idea that they live within us, the pantheon lives within us, is so wonderful. Whereas in Western religion, like the Greeks and Romans, like you're saying, like their gods, they looked out. They're like, oh, that volcano is a god, the ocean is a god, the storm, the lightning is a god. And my understanding of Hinduism is like, oh, you know, compassion is a god, right? Wisdom is a god. Intelligence is a god, right? It's more about the mental states. So in that whole religion, like it's a psychology too, right? Like it's more than just a religion. There's so much messages and wisdom, and I think that's how you talk about, you know, male mentors, right? Like that's how these authors pass down all these really deep teachings and great books like the Bhagavad Gita, right? Like there's so much in there that if you really study it, it can teach you everything you need to know, right? Like that's how, before they had the internet, before they had libraries, they had these stories that they would tell people. So yeah, I've always just kind of wanted to go a level deeper and get in touch with this like big lineage of knowledge and wisdom that's been with us, you know?
Wisdom is everywhere, Mark.
Yeah.
And you see, if we look at the world, when there was not much of connectivity,
Yeah.
the world was in a way talking about the same things. You talked about, the sun, the even in Hinduism, it's a way of life. Basically, it's not,
Yeah.
if you don't look at it from a purely strictly. That's why you'll find a person from India very openly going to any other place of worship. And if you say this is God is the best, yes, it is,
Yeah.
because in at the end it is only one. God is only one. The way you want to look at it in a particular way, I am fully with you. And if you tell that this God is the mightiest, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And if you look at it in another way, that is what way it is. So we have also got the sun god, the the ocean god we call Varun Devta,
Yep.
and even the wind, the fire, the energy, everything is a god. And the whole. But one thing I have understood from either Buddhism, I don't know much about. I can still make mistakes about this. But one thing I've understood is whatever little understanding I could gather is that it's all how you treat a particular moment. For example,
Yeah.
is if this is your iPhone, this is not, but it's just a pen. It is mightier than an iPhone. But if this is your iPhone, and you are very happy because you just now bought it and you were wanting to have it, you are very happy. You are in the seventh heaven or the eighth heaven. And at that very second, it falls down for whatever reason, you go to the hell of your life. How do you not let these two instances impact your thought process is what makes you as an individual. If you manage to not be too happy about it, of having this thing, and not be too sad about losing it, you are what is there in every place that people have wanted to see. That detach from materialism, detach from the things that impact your thought process, detach from things that detach you from being yourself. Detachment does not mean separation. Enjoy everything, but let not it be impacting the one you are. I guess that's the same with masculinity, femininity, feminism, or whatever it is. That's what my thoughts are. These are my personal thoughts. People may not agree, but this is, I thought I'll just share with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's about riding the wave, but not being invested in where you land.
Exactly.
Right. Like, and I think Buddhism is much about that. And masculinity is about that. It's like being able to watch yourself and have these experiences. They're all really good, but don't grasp so hard to the outcome. And I think when we talk about, men that are struggling, they're connected too much to the outcome, right? Am I going to be rich enough? Am I going to have a attractive wife? Am I going to be successful? And that grasping causes a lot of suffering.
Absolutely. There is much to learn about so many things from you, Mark. And I'm sure especially about pathway to masculinity, about the authentic masculinity. And so a lot of people who would want to know more about you, from you, connect with Men's Therapy Online, what's the best way for them to do so?
The best way is just check out our website. So it's www.menstherapy.online. There's no .com, it's .online. And on there, we have a ton of resources, a lot of them free. So the pathway thing that I went through, that's a free email course, no strings attached. Sign up. We email you every other day about stuff. There's a book club. There's book lists if you want to learn and read and research. And then, of course, we have our main offerings. We have, our counseling and our groups and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of good stuff to explore, even if you don't want to sign up for something. So everything is located on the website, www.menstherapy.online.
Wonderful, wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Great. Thank you.